Thank you for joining me on the Bold Lines podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about the difference between performative and inherent value. Give you a quick heads up, this is going to be a little bit of a challenging topic. I use this all the time in therapy when I talk to clients about how they assess themselves, the way that they see their ability to gain relationship and worth in other people. And so some of this will come off as challenging, hopefully not confusing, at least by the end, but performance and inherent value are vastly different. So let's look at what they are. First off, I want you to know that we're going to be focusing on deeper motivations for actions. This isn't simply when I do something that I get a sense of value. What this is actually about, the difference between performative and inherent value, is why we do, what we're hoping to achieve, and what it says about us that we're doing something at all. In order to really parse the difference out, we need to consider the lifespan. What were the expectations or needs that we had in our family of origin and in our relationships? This exercise in examining the difference between performative and inherent value is truly an examination on where we gain identity and worth. So let's start with performative value. What is it? It is when you have to earn in order to have worth or standing in life. Earning isn't just gaining money, because that's what it sounds like on the surface. This is also through effort, actions, and outcomes. Performative value is based on an internal sense of motivation as well as ways that we're connected to others. Performative value, on a simple sense, could mean I do good, therefore I get good, which means I am good. It's a works-based identity system. It's very straightforward. Most people that I work with that have a sense of performative value can see it as a very black and white endeavor. It's something that makes a ton of sense to people. But there's a big problem with performative value. It's that whoever works from this dynamic is always working from behind. So follow with me. If someone feels as if they need to work really hard, they need to help enough people, they need to be good enough at their job or whatever it is in order to gain value, they actually don't believe they have it. One of the questions that I ask people around this specific topic is, do you provide value when you're asleep? What about if you were in a coma? Do you have value at that point, or do you lose all of it? What happens if you're injured? If you can no longer perform the job that you're used to? Do you lose a sense of identity or personhood? All of this is incredibly important to examine, because if anybody here is listening and wondering how it might apply to them, some people really work very hard only to try to barely escape this sense of loneliness and fear of abandonment. That's what performative value is. If I work hard enough, therefore I will get good enough, which means that I am enough. So let me give you some basic examples. These are going to be overall things that I have seen in therapy. I typically work with teenagers and up, so my examples will fit that way. A very straightforward example that I see pretty common is the husband who has to earn enough or achieve enough to be a good spouse. I'm a good dad because I provide. Inside of that is the assumption that what I'm providing is good, and if I weren't providing as much, something would be wrong with me. Let's spread that out to the dad. I am a good father because I give these things. Now, should that be something that fathers should do? Absolutely. Parents should always do things for their kids, or at least have their kids in mind. You can't call yourself a good father if you don't do anything. If you're absent, you can't be a good father because you're not there. So that's an example of performative value. I have to achieve enough. I have to make enough money to be a good dad. Another example of this can come from mom. I have to care enough. I have to keep the house clean enough, make enough food. I have to do all of these things. Or maybe I have to be good enough at my job so that I can be a good mother. Another example that I see pretty regularly with my teenagers is that they have to be a good student who gets the right grades in order to be a good kid. I have to act right. I have to work hard enough. I have to get the right grades, the right GPA, extracurriculars in order to be a good kid. If I didn't get the good grades, if I misbehaved or I stepped out of line, I wouldn't be a good kid anymore. This creates a great strain on teenagers, by the way. When they link their performance to their sense of value, coincidentally, their mental health goes down, but eventually their grades go down too because it's not a sustainable dynamic. Let's take this a little bit closer to home, at least for me, and for anybody who is listening who has been in therapy. Some things might start making sense here soon. There's a common dynamic in performative value amongst therapists, mental health providers. If I am a good enough therapist, then I will have clients that get better. And therefore, I've been given a sense of validation and meaning in my life. Now, on the surface, that might sound good enough, right? Like, the therapist should be good at their job. That's what people are paying them for. Okay, yes, but anybody who has been to a therapist that is overly jovial, they're too easy. They look at their clients and just try to get them to understand how amazing they are. The therapists that seem to be not just invested in a professional way, in a lifestyle or calling sort of way, but seem to be personally invested in their client getting better and being better, those therapists are working under the assumption that they have performative value. Now you're starting to see where some of this gets really, really dangerous. What happens if we have a performative value that includes other people's behavior? Let's go back to the dad, the one who had to be able to provide everything for their kid in order to be a good dad, to gain that sense of value or identity. What happens if that kid starts to reject the things that they're given? If a dad based his whole identity on being able to provide, but then he has a child who rejects that provision, dad has no meaningful way to perform well enough. And so he loses all value in being a father. Is this reductionistic? Yes, but you get the point. So what is inherent value? Why is it different? I'm going to encourage you as I'm going through this, push aside fears of being good, quote unquote, precluding you from doing good. What I mean by that is there's a difference between understanding who you are as a person and therefore doing good and what performative value says, which is I have to do good in order to be good. It's a little confusing. Let me work it out, see if we can make some sense of it. In order for someone to have inherent value, they have to accept and find worth in the humanity that they possess. That might sound overly woo-woo or spiritual to some people. Granted, this is a very spiritual and religious idea for a lot of people, that everyone has a sense of worth in their humanity. Here's the thing, though. If you are able to find value in your humanity, then when you're awake, you have value. When you're asleep, you have value. When you're in a coma, you have value. Now, most people listening will say, well, yeah, obviously, If someone's awake, they have value. If they're asleep, if they're in a coma, of course they have value. Even if they're unconscious, they have value. I would encourage you, if that was you, saying, well, yeah, that makes sense. Turn it around to you. If that is true of other people, it has to be true of you as well. And so, as we're sitting here considering what it means to have value, what it means to have inherent value, I need you to understand that these rules apply to everyone. Inherent value is also not something that you can enforce on others. You can't say, well, because of my humanity and my identity, therefore you have to do what I tell you. In a twisted sense, but one worth mentioning, you can't say, I'm a good father. It doesn't matter what you think I provided for you. My inherent value says I'm good enough, even when I'm doing nothing and I hurt other people. We have to tease this out a little bit more. It's also not shaken by simple actions. So I have value as a human being, but I rear end someone. Does that make me less valuable? Does it mean I made a mistake? That's what's important about inherent value. It is based in your humanity, not necessarily your actions. Going back to making sure everybody has the same rules, you especially don't have special rules. And I've mentioned this in a previous episode that there's one thing that my clients love hearing and those who aren't in therapy find kind of offensive. It's that no matter who you are, if you walk in my office, you are unique, you are worthwhile, and you have inherent value in my eyes, but you're not special. We all have the same rules. We're all on the same playing field, and we can have the same expectations. That's what's actually interesting about inherent value is everyone has it. What we do with it matters, but you have it. So, this inherent value, as opposed to the performative value, is focused on something that's intangible, something that can't necessarily be taken away from you. That performative value is something that you have to earn every day. You start from a deficit and have to work into. Why does this matter in therapy? I would say almost every single client I've ever had works under the framework of performative value. That's one of the reasons they're actually in therapy is they feel like they haven't performed well enough. Their value has decreased so significantly that they need to come seek therapy because they might just be as terrible as they always felt. I will say if a client is performing, that's how they make sense of the world, they can never have a stable identity because it's always precarious. It could always be lost, or even worse, someone could see underneath and realize that they're just performing, avoiding the inevitable discovery of others that they really are as terrible as they fear. In therapy, it's important to recognize this. I work from the framework of inherent value. When a client comes into my office, I examine how the week went. We talk about it. I don't consider them less human or less valuable because they didn't do as well. A lot of clients seem to think that way, though. The interesting thing about inherent value is it's a framework to work from. If you don't do well, you mess up, or you intentionally don't care about your success or the people around you, I can go back and point to that and say, where is this value at? Because you're not living up to the thing you have. What's holding you back? Interestingly, I will say, if I can keep people accountable in therapy, there's a good point in recognizing that we all fail. So if a client simply fails in performative value every week, they'll never progress. They'll never get better. So over time, I focus less and less on failures because you can only play the same tape over and over before you start losing any meaningful work from it. This idea of performative value starting from behind is a really big deal. It's something that I think actually prolongs therapy for a lot of people. Let's say you're coming to a therapist, you're asking for help, you're wanting them to help you grow, but you're performing and so are they. Well, if everyone starts from behind, it's going to take a ton of effort just to even come to center. People can get in a cycle of therapy for years when they don't really need to because they were never actually told that they have value. Now, they might have heard that from their therapist, but they weren't really informed. They didn't take it in. They didn't start to assimilate that into their work, their family life, their sense of value. They always have to keep working. They have to keep doing. They have to achieve, perform, virtue signal, make sense of things. Therapy that I do is a little bit different. We use humanity as a reference point. We don't use it as a way to deflect from terrible behavior. I will tell you, if you work from a framework of inherent value, your actions can increase relationships and healthy dynamics. This doesn't mean you can claim being a good mother just because you made an extra pie that day. I have no idea why that came to mind. If somebody emails me and asks me about it, I'll tell you the exact same thing. But you can't say, I have inherent value and I made a pie, so therefore I'm even more better, right? No. Yes, the grammar was terrible there on purpose. You have the same starting point as everyone else. You can absolutely help the people around you and increase a sense of meaning in the people around you. That doesn't increase your value of your humanity, but it does make your life a little more meaningful. You can have a greater sense of purpose. One of the biggest reasons that I love a sense of inherent value in therapy is once clients can accept that, they can connect on a human level with their therapist. I say human and not friendship level. It's a very important distinction in therapy. Once I can get clients to understand that they have inherent value, we can talk as people. And clients can work out of the hurt puppy role. They don't have to come in sulking every week talking about where they were awful, what they sucked at, all of the reasons that it's a good thing they start from behind. Instead, they can come to realize they're a human in need of healing and direction. I'm not special either, but I can talk to clients human to human and help them examine their own dynamics. I truly believe as a therapist, it's my job to help people recognize why they do what they do, and to give them the option to figure out what to do with it. Once they can recognize all of those things, they can understand humanity, they can make sense of their lives and the directions that they're going. I let them decide what they want to do. The biggest reason why we need inherent value in therapy as opposed to performative gives long-term independence. Can you imagine the difference? If you were to assume that you had value in your humanity, therefore you're going to do good things as a reflection of your value instead of a way to earn it. You can go do things on your own. You can try new things and you can fail because your quote unquote failure is an expression of humanity. It's not a core sense of identity. The greatest thing besides this long-term independence means that you do work outside of therapy. I hope at some point all of my clients don't need me and they fire me. If you have a sense of inherent value, you have a framework to work off of. Good news is you can go and do something with it. You're not stuck just waiting around, wondering when the next time you're going to fail is. So let's give a quick summary for those that have made it this far in the episode. Performative versus inherent value is very different. Almost every single client that I've ever met with has a sense of performative value. They have to do in order to gain value. They have to achieve. They have to succeed. They have to provide in order to gain value. If they don't, it's not that they become neutral, it's that they become negative. Inherent value is different. It's a recognition of humanity. In many times, in many cases, it's connected to spirituality or religion. And it's this core sense of who you are, of which there's outgrowth of action, healthy relationships, dynamics. There's healthy intervention, positive change in the world around you. If you're wondering where you fit in all of this, step back and examine. Do I have value when it's just me? Or do I only feel a sense of value when I'm connected with other people and they see the good work in me? They see the way that I succeed. If that's you, you might be working from a sense of performative value, and I will warn you, it will not last because we all fail. And if you're always working from behind, eventually, you're never going to be positive. Thank you so much for listening today. I hope you got something that was useful for you. This is one that takes a little bit of internal exploration. So if you paused and you took some time to think through it, I hope that you give it another listen through to really flush out what we were talking about today. If you found it useful enough, I hope that you share this episode with those that you care about. You can actually follow this podcast, and every Tuesday you will get an automatic download. If you feel the need, you can give a tip to pay for the production of this podcast. Thank you. Have a great day.